Lemnis Gate is a great game, but it would be even more amazing if we added some new variety into the mix. Specifically, I think it would be awesome to see some new operatives with new abilities and new weapons added into the mix, and I've been thinking a lot about it over the last few weeks. Something you should know about me is that I love theory crafting for games, and today I'm going to show you 5 potential new operatives that I have theory crafted for Lemnis Gate. Before we start though, I just want to say that I have taken a lot of inspiration from other members of the Lemnis community, as well as from some other games, but I'll make sure to reference those throughout. The first operative that I propose to be added to Lemnis Gate is the Defender. The Defender, or as he is also known, Hank Jones, is a close-range support style operative. The Defender's ability is to throw a device named the Repulsor that repels or deflects projectiles such as rockets, shields, toxin blob, all that jazz. By repelling projectiles, I mean that any projectiles that enters its radius will kinda curve around it and get sent in a random direction away from the repulsor. Throwing this would be similar to a deathblow mine in trajectory, and would stick to surfaces similarly as well. It does not deflect regular bullets though, and can easily be destroyed if shot at with bullets. I imagine this ability could be really good for defending S&D objectives or operatives that have been killed by a deathblow rocket or Capitan grenade, or even for deflecting an opponent's shield that was meant to save an operative. Some people may even get really creative with it and intentionally throw the repulsor down in order to curve a rocket shot around a corner. This would be really difficult to do though, because the curves would be kinda random, and anyways, the play could also be countered by destroying the repulsor. Also, the ability only has 2 charges, as to not make it too OP. As for his weapon, the Defender wields a slug gun. The slug gun fires a powerful slug-style projectile that travels in a largely straight line. However, the projectiles are somewhat slow. Think about the same speed as a Capitan grenade, but moving in a straight line. Dealing 60 body damage and being unable to crit, 2 shots with this gun will take down any operative, but you do need to be somewhat close or have really nice timing in order to land the shots. The Defender has a lot of things going for him so far, and to add to it, he also has 120 health. That's the same as Deathblow. He does, however, also share similar speed to Deathblow, moving rather slowly, and his damage output on objectives is decent, but it does still take a while to add up. Another fun little fact about the Defender is that he would be the first American operative added to Lemnis Gate. The next operative we'll be covering was actually an idea by N21LV on the official Lemnis Gate Discord. I took his suggestion and refined it a bit, so let's introduce the operative Mask. Mask, or as he's known only by his closest friends, Kasim Vora, is a long-range character specializing in the art of diversion. Also, it should be noted that he killed all his best friends after them learning his name, so don't tell him I told you guys. Moving on, Mask's signature ability, Hollow Mask, allows him to create 3 decoys of himself that will run around the map and shoot and collect objectives as they go. These decoys will basically split off from the real Mask when he activates his ability, and are meant to cause confusion for the opponent. The decoys cannot actually deal or take damage, and cannot collect objectives. They are merely there as a distraction. I imagine Mask could be a really solid operative for confusing your opponent. A smart opponent will of course be able to identify who the real Mask is by if he's carrying an objective or dealing damage, and can track him from there. But tracking the real Mask does add in another thing for your opponent to worry about, distracting him from other things, and in the heat of battle it can be confusing to identify who to shoot at if there are 3 decoys with a big flashy operative symbol above their head running around the map in addition to all the real operatives. The decoys do only last for 12 seconds, so it is important to activate them at the right time in the time loop. And of course, if Mask dies, the decoys will disappear as well. Mask's gun is no other but the railgun. This railgun is similar in design to the one used in the game Splitgate, being an accurate, chargeable weapon that one-hits most operatives. I imagine the railgun being used somewhat similarly to Striker's sniper rifle, as it will hit accurately across the map and is a bit more forgiving in that it doesn't require a headshot. Conversely, it does require a short charge-up period, which means you gotta have the operative in your sights for a while and track them, or time your charge shot right. And you get no slow-mo with Mask. The railgun may be used at somewhat closer ranges than a sniper though, as it will have slightly less of a zoom on its scope. The railgun could also be viable in close combat though, using hipfire to get a body shot. The railgun is definitely a high risk, high reward weapon, and missing a shot with it will be very punishing. Stats wise, Mask is pretty much a jack of all trades. He features the basic 100 hit point health pool, has an average speed similar to that of Striker, and does fairly high DPS to objectives. I definitely imagine Mask being useful in any game mode to cause confusion, and his railgun is pretty solid for both killing enemies and capturing objectives. I do think he will have a relatively high skill ceiling in order to get used to the charge time on the railgun, but if mastered it can be incredibly powerful. Next, let's talk about everyone's favorite, model KRLY861, or as her colleagues at Lemnis Industries call her, Carly. Carly is an even deadlier and more adorable version of Carl. She features an ability that I absolutely love in other games like Titanfall or Outriders. This ability allows Carly to create a force field in front of her for 2 seconds, which will catch all bullets and projectiles shot at her. Once the 2 seconds are up, all the caught bullets and projectiles are reflected towards whatever direction Carly is aiming at. Carly can also cancel the ability early in order to decrease its cooldown. This sounds like a stupidly strong ability, but it does have its drawbacks. First of all, the cooldown on it is a whopping 6 seconds. Secondly, she moves at a snail's pace while the force field is active, pun intended. And finally, the field doesn't actually catch all bullets. Lasers, such as Carl's laser, move faster than light, and Toxin's glob shots are too fluid to be caught by the shield, allowing both to pass through and damage Carly for an effective counter. Quite tragic that Carly's downfall would be to her husband Carl's laser. Of course, she can also be outflanked while performing her ability and killed from the side or behind where the field doesn't reach. This would be a solid ability to not only protect Carly and her friends, but to turn that protection on the offensive and send all the damage right back at your enemy. I could also imagine people shooting rockets, shotgun shells, or sniper shots at their own Carly for her to catch, and then she turns around and sends it on to another operative. I could also imagine someone missing that Carl's shield or Deathblow mine, but then in a future round they take Carly to catch that shield or mine and then throw it to where it was meant to go. Definitely a lot of fun opportunities with this. But enough about her ability, let's talk about her primary weapon. The Carly model wields a radiation beam, which is similar in design to the beam used by Carl. This weapon fires a green laser that does 12 damage per second to the body of enemy operatives. This is a rather low damage number, but it is made up for by the radiation damage of the beam. Any operative hit by the beam will take 22 radiation damage per second for as long as the beam is hitting them, and will continue to take damage for twice as long whenever the beam stops targeting them. That means Carly can fire at an operative for 1 second, doing 12 direct damage and 22 radiation damage, and then after she stops firing, the operative will continue to take 44 radiation damage over the next 2 seconds, for a total of 78 damage. This is quite a unique weapon and must be used wisely. When using this weapon, it wouldn't be important to know how much you need to shoot an enemy operative before you can leave them to die of radiation poisoning. It might also be important to take into account that the radiation doesn't kill them immediately, so even if you dealt a fatal blow, they might still make it back to the base with an XM, or they might kill one of your operatives before dropping dead. Another little side note is that the radiation beam only does damage to living organic targets, meaning that objectives and our robotic companions Carl and Carly are immune, and so is Toxin, who fashions a radiation-proof suit that also shields her against her own toxic sludge. On the stat side of things, Carly will be identical to Carl in terms of health and movement, but she will have even lower DPS on objectives than Toxin does, as the majority of Carly's damage comes from the radiation. Next, I want to talk about an operative that I think I've put more thought into than any other on this list. This operative is Vlad Mirkov, otherwise known as the Rogue. The Rogue features a dimensional phaser ability. The phaser is a device that can be thrown on the ground, walls, or even attached to operatives. Once triggered, it places the target operative into ghost mode for 1.5 seconds. Ghost mode is the mode that an operative enters whenever they die, but in this case, the device wouldn't kill them, it would just put them in ghost mode temporarily. The device would make a tiny explosion once triggered, applying its ghost mode effect to any operative caught in the explosion. This will typically only be one operative, but if multiple operatives are grouped really tightly together, it can theoretically apply to as many operatives as are caught in the explosion. It should be noted that the ghost mode will work just as if a character died. That means that if they are carrying an XM, they will drop it, and if they are carrying a shield, it will be destroyed when they enter ghost mode. The ability has 2 charges, meaning that the Rogue can throw a phaser onto the back of an operative, activate it, and then throw another on the back of another operative. Or he could put a device on 2 operatives and activate both devices at once. The controls for this would be holding the ability button to see the trajectory that the device is thrown and releasing the button to actually throw, while activating the device would be done by simply tapping the ability button. I imagine this ability being incredibly useful, as unlike a shield, it will guarantee no damage to your operative. That means even if a Vendetta shotguns your operative in the face or you walk over a minefield, Ghost Mode will save you. Do keep in mind though that you can't deal damage or use abilities while you are in Ghost Mode, so be careful not to activate it at the wrong time. It will take some memorization of timestamps to use the Rogue correctly, so you know exactly when to press the ability button to save your operative from a deadly encounter. Also, I never said that this ability is exclusive to allies. You can use the phaser on opponent operatives too, putting them in ghost mode right before they shoot one of your operatives, or use an ability, or while they're damaging an objective. And an important thing to note though is that the phaser is destroyable, with only 20 hit points. Also, the Rogue needs to be alive to actually activate the phaser. That means if the Rogue is killed or the phaser gets destroyed, no more ghost mode for you. Another fun quirk to this ability would be exchanging XM. Currently in XM, there is no way to hand off an XM to another operative. The only way to drop an XM is if you die, or on Tectonic Worlds you can also drop the XM and have it respawn if you fall off the map. But with the phaser, you can put an operative in ghost mode to hand off an XM to another operative. Particularly, I imagine some players picking up an XM with like Vendetta and then slide jumping across a gap to get another XM, and then later picking the Rogue to put Vendetta in ghost form just as she crosses that gap, making the XM she's currently carrying drop down to the ground below, where the rogue is ready to pick it up and bring it back to base. You could potentially also use this offensively, putting enemy operatives in ghost mode to either prevent them from picking up XM or to make them drop it. Now, that was a whole slew of information. I guess I got a bit carried away in this ability. Moving on, let's talk about the rogue's weapon of choice. He wields a compound bow, which fires fast and precise arrows with decent damage. The arrows deal 40 damage on a body shot and 80 damage on a headshot. This makes it possible to 2-tap an enemy operative with the bow, or 3-tap if you're hitting all body shots. I think this could be quite a versatile weapon at close to mid-range, and I think it's a weapon archetype that Lemnis Gate could really benefit from. Stats-wise, the rogue is your run-of-the-mill operative, standard health pool, medium speed, and medium objective DPS. The final operative we will be talking about today is based on a suggestion by Rosas on the Lemnis Gate Discord. Rosas also has a YouTube channel covering Lemnis content, so I'll link his channel in the description. So, Rosas' idea focuses on the defensive melee character archetype that can be seen by Braum in League of Legends or Reinhardt in Overwatch. This operative, which would be named the Brute, has an energy shield similar to Reinhardt's. Once activated, this shield expands out well beyond the boundaries of the Brute's body, blocking all damage that hits it. It's important to notice that this blocks damage going both ways, unlike a Karl's shield that only blocks damage one way. The Brute will be walking very slowly when his ability is active, similar to Kali's ability. The shield has 320 health, but can be instantly destroyed if a Karl shield hits it. If it is destroyed, the Brute can no longer use it for the remainder of the round. As long as the shield is still intact, the Brute can activate it whenever he pleases, although it does have a short 0.2 second activation delay. I imagine this shield could be a very useful substitute to Karl's shield, with a much bigger margin for error. It does however require that the Brute follows along with the operative he wants to shield, as he basically is the shield, unlike Karl, who can fling shields across the map or attach them to operatives. The Brute's weapon of choice is the Rocket Sledge, which has been forged deep in the dwarven ruins of Schmarkenrock. This melee weapon packs a considerable punch, dealing 80 damage per swing while able to be swung once every second. That's enough to one-hit a rush or two-hit anyone else. Obviously, it cannot crit, but a thing of beauty like this wouldn't need to. Instead, the Rocket Sledge has a unique slam ability. If the Brute holds the fire button while mid-air, perhaps after jumping off a cliff or a building, he will hold the weapon above his head and slam it into the ground upon impact. Damage increases with the amount of time he is in the air, up to a maximum of 100 damage. That's enough to one-hit kill most operatives, and the damage is distributed in an AoE around him, dealing the full damage to any enemy close enough. This weapon would definitely be interesting, as it is the first melee weapon to ever enter Lemnis Gate. Operatives cannot even melee with a fist or guns as it stands, so this would be truly unique. As for balance, it would be hard to tell how powerful a melee weapon would truly be without trying it out in-game, but I have high hopes for it. As for stats, the Brute is a big, bulky boy, so he has a large health pool of 120 hit points. His speed is something I debated back and forth on. Arguably, he should be a little slower to provide balance, but if he's too slow, it defeats his whole purpose. He needs to be able to get to friendly operatives in time to shield them, and needs to get up close to enemy operatives to kill them. As such, I decided to give him an average speed, making him fast enough to carry out key moves, but not making him overtly OP. His objective DPS stands at an average level, dealing around 80 damage per second, but of course he does need to be up close. That is all for my suggestions and theory crafting of new Lemnis Gate Operatives. I do have some other ideas that I've been thinking of for future operatives, so I am just going to give you guys a few sneak peeks, but I don't want to reveal too much just yet. Before ending this video, I just want to reiterate that this is all hypothetical. Obviously, there are likely to be some balance issues with the abilities and weapons that I have proposed, but a lot of that could likely be tweaked for a fun gameplay experience. Also, the operatives in this vid are all ideas that I or other members of the community came up with. Radloop have not given any information on whether or not they will be adding operatives to the game at some point, so it's all just speculation. Personally, I'm not so sure that we will ever see new operatives in Lemnis Gate, but if we did, it would probably just be like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 operatives. That's just my thoughts though. For all we know, Radloop is gonna add 20 more operatives. Wouldn't that be a sight to behold? Anyways, I do hope that you enjoyed this video. It was a video that I was really excited about making, and I hope you felt the same watching it. If you'd like to see another video like this, hit that like button and leave a comment below to let me know that this is what you guys want to see more of. I'm Snail, and I'm signing off.